All right. Well, also in news today, the Biden administration is leveling sanctions against Burma, which recently had a coup d'état takeover by the military. So, what are your thoughts, Ricky? Is it going to be effective, these sanctions, or is it just going to be like China, they're just going to piss in the wind?
Sanctions are weird, man. Sanctions is like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends who's in on it. It depends how strict the sanctions are. There's just a lot that go into it, and I wish we had somebody that's like really was in on foreign policy and knew this.
Well, someone that was big on like Myanmar or Burmese politics.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting. I know somebody from Burma, but yeah, man. So just tell me in general, like what the coup is all about and what the history is there.
So basically, like the history of Burma post-colonialism, like I believe they got independence in the 40s, like late 40s, like 47 or 48. And so for a while they had kind of like a provisional democratic government. And so it kind of worked out for a little bit, but the problem with Burma is that not just the Burmese live there. There are thousands of other, well, maybe not thousands, but hundreds of other ethnic groups that live there.
48, nice call.
Yeah, and so, like, since like, and that's kind of the problem with like colonialism after the fact, is that most of these states are artificial. Like, you look at most of like the Middle East, like all these places are artificially created by colonial powers. The British just cobbled together a bunch of, different ethnic groups into this thing that we now call Myanmar, and it is not really working out that well because there are so many different groups. Like the whole Rohingya Muslim crisis came out of Myanmar, and it came during sort of their transition from a military dictatorship to democracy. And so I guess like the bigger question is that do ethnically diverse democracies work in a developing world? Because obviously there's like, we look at like Iraq, we look at Syria, we look at all these different other places that have like these, different ethnic or sectarian problems that kind of bubble over. And because that's the one thing I learned very quickly about Myanmar, is that there are Buddhist monks that advocate for like killing people.
How'd you learn that?
Because of the fact that the way they treated the Rohingya Muslims. Like the Rohingya Muslims, one of the sites that they said is that the state endorsed these monks to go out into villages and kill people.
All the
and some of their followers especially. And the meditation enhanced their killing ability, or
should have stayed in your temple, man. Just like
that's the thing in Myanmar though. A lot of the monks, they just travel around in the streets. Like they just have like these little groups, and they just kind of, they're kind of like in society, but like no one really bothers them.
Interesting. Huh.
It's kind of like
there's like priests.
Well, they're kind of like the Amish. Like they're just kind of in society, but they're not really.
Nobody pays attention.
Yeah, no one really pays attention to them. Like obviously, most of the country is Buddhist, so it's a little bit different. Like most of the United States isn't Amish, but and so I don't know. Like, is it? I guess is it better for people to have less freedom under these dictatorships, or less than democratic like places? But that's another thing too. Like when the British left, like they didn't really leave them anything besides the military. Like they didn't really have.
Always the British. Why does the British own?
Well, even if it had been the French, like the French didn't really leave them anything.
No, I'm not saying leave them. I'm just like every country that achieves independence is always from the British. I feel like
Well, that's why most of the world speaks English.
Yeah, a lot of the world, huh?
Well, you look at the Spanish. You can look at them.
Yeah.
But a lot of those countries got independence a lot earlier.
But that's what authoritarian regimes are going to tell you. That's their goal. They feel like the country as a whole, the populace as a whole, will be better off than everybody having freedom and fending for themselves. Sure, they may strip all the farmland and kill the farmers, and then let a bunch of people starve that are minorities or.
Well, that's nothing about Burmese society, is that it's very segregated. Like there's actually districts that only like certain ethnic groups can go into.
That is interesting.
Like there's I
was saying more in general.
Okay.
More in general, like if you take
Yeah.
If you take Stalin, if you take Chairman Mao, if
Yeah.
you take these guys, that's
It's better for them to hold the country together than
yeah. They're like, sure,
You
80
know.
million people will die, like, but we'll be stronger after that. You
Yeah.
know, so it's completely against Western morals to do that.
yeah.
But if you don't have those morals, then you're like, well, the country will survive. The country will be strong after
Yeah.
this.
Well, but
You know?
I guess the argument to that is that, you know, most authoritarians would say that democracies are shams because, you know, they had a democratically elected leader in I think Aung San Suu Kyi, and you know she perfectly turned a blind eye to some of the atrocities committed against the Bengalis and Rohingya Muslims in the country, done by Buddhists.
The problem is you can't just have one person. Like the reason.
Well, I don't think it's one person, but I think that there's a cultural and sort of nationalistic view of what Burma should be. Like Burma perceives itself as this Buddhist, like that's the whole thing. Like they perceive themselves as this Buddhist country. Everything's in harmony, and you have kind of these invaders, which the Rohingya Muslims aren't really that big of a minority in Myanmar, but they're a sizable enough population to where they are noticed, and so when you have like this ethnic minority who
so they see them as, hey, they're coming in,
Yeah.
they're changing our
Our
culture,
culture,
they're taking our resources,
yeah.
whatever. It's kind of like the American Indians when people came over from Europe and started
or even
settling.
now when or even now with the xenophobia saying, there's immigrants coming, they're taking your jobs, they're sucking up welfare, like they have like uncontrollable birth rates or unsustainable birth rates, I mean. And so I think that's kind of like the whole thing. And obviously we import immigrants who might not have 100% the same values as America, and that's what that's what some of the critics of this immigration or expelling of these minorities from Burma is that they don't really share our same values, because obviously Buddhists and Muslims don't have the same religious values or even cultural values.
I don't know if values is the right word, and I'd have to look both. I'd have to look more.
Well, I'm saying that the diversity of
beliefs,
it,
are obviously different, and I'm sure they contradict each other at some points. But man,
because you live in a country where everyone's eating pork and you're Muslim, so it's like, well,
yeah, they can get over that. Like. Do you see? This is completely off topic. Are we done with Burma?
Yeah, we can take off on a tangent if you want.
Well, no, this is a very short tangent.
Okay.
So a video came out of this lady that was crying and complaining about how Tom Brady had been throwing the trophy with like in between boats or whatever, and she's like, my father is a silversmith and he built that trophy. I know how much blood, sweat, and tears go in that trophy, and I know the other silversmiths, and I demand that he apologize for treating it with such disdain. She was going off, and I was like, what?
Okay, first of all, Tom Brady won that trophy.
He can
single-handed.
Whatever he wants.
He won that trophy and he has 6 more. So if he loses one in the bottom of Tampa Bay, I think he's perfectly fine. Secondly, I am pretty sure that they were obviously intoxicated with some substance.
Dude. But it was just like,
and it was a party thing. Like, and I
thought, let the man enjoy himself.
Because especially like look at the NHL. Look at what
the country needs some of that right now.
Yeah, and like look at other trophies in the past. Like there have been teams that have literally lost like trophies and been like, oh, we don't know where it is, and then it comes up like 2 months later in like some strip club.
With the NHL, where everybody gets it for a night, you don't know where that's been. I don't want to touch it.
That's the whole thing about the NHL. Like they literally had to have someone that they paid to be with the trophy at all times.
What a job, I'll do that job. I'll pay to do that.
Yeah, like they literally like there's people there's literally been carriers of the cup that have said that we went to a strip club and we didn't come out for like 10 hours. And then like
it's gone.
And like, there's obviously been various liquids poured into Sir Stanley's cup, and
but the point it goes to a bigger issue is that everybody feels like they're owed something, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you don't own that. You don't get to tell other people what to do.
It's a moment.
Everybody's looking for something just to be mad about. Just to be
I think that's the overall culture. I think that people, by and large,
why are we going that way?
I think it's just we're so self-involved, and like we don't really think about things in such a way that it affects other people. Because I don't know if you looked at the recent comments of like Draymond Green.
No.
He talked a little bit about the trade with Drummond. He's a forward for the Pistons.
Okay.
And obviously like it just came out recently that his team is going to trade him.
Okay.
And so basically like they didn't have him suit up. They just had him, obviously sit in the team section, but he was just in like regular street clothes. And so Draymond Green just kind of said like, oh, like, that's kind of disrespectful that they, told him that he's going to be traded and things like that. Mind you, he makes $22 million a year. Like he's not gonna get any cut in pay. Like he's not gonna get any fines. You're basically just paid to sit out for a couple weeks until the team can find a better place. You'll be all right,
man. You'll be
all right. And he's just like, oh, this is so disrespectful. Mind you, there are players in the NFL, the NBA right now, most notably Kyrie Irving, who disappeared for 2 weeks. Because he had mental issues. Now I don't discount his mental issues because I think he is probably suffering from some mental illness. But for him just to be gone for 2 weeks and no one in the media like comment on that, they're like, oh, he's just taking a moment to. It's like he's paid $35 million a year to play basketball. He could at least tell his team, his coach, and possibly his teammates and owners of the team where, like, no one knew where he was.
So weird, huh?
No one knew where he was. The coach they just asked the coach, like, where's Kyrie? Like, I don't know.
The point is, stop being offended. Like,
yeah, it's outrage.